Hey everyone, in this video I'm going to explain to you what is the new node socket system and how to actually use it. It is a very cool new system. You're going to understand how far you can push this, and everything starts in the editor, of course, as always, and under settings, combat, and here we now have the node socket sections. You can add as many as you want. In this case I just have a few setup. I have projectile 1, projectile 2, projectile hit. And I'm going to quickly show you how they work and what they're actually used for. So pretty much before getting into it, let's say that you had a class which is like a sorcerer or like a mage, and it had some really cool animation, like for example one hand animation for a fireball or something like that, and you want this fireball to be spawned exactly from the hand, right, instead of like inside the character or like in front of the character. And before in RPG Builder, before 1.1, we had no control over that. We didn't have that much control on where exactly we could spawn these things, and that's pretty much what sockets are for. So if I now go under combat and abilities and look at fireball, for example, I go to ability type, projectile. This of course looks quite different than what you have right now, because projectiles are also getting a pretty big update in 1.1. But here we have a new option which is called use socket. If I turn this off, it's going to let us set an offset based on the caster position. So it is going to be spawned at the caster position with this kind of local vector. But now in this video, we will focus on the socket part. So if I turn use socket on, we now have the ability to select one of those sockets that we just created in the settings, right? And if I assign projectile 1, it will, when we use the fireball ability, and by the way, when I say we, it can be the player, but it could also be an NPC casting this fireball. It will look and try to find if this NPC or player has a projectile 1 socket setup. And this part is what I'm going to show you a bit later. Anyway, now sockets are not only for the casting. Sockets are also used, for example, in the case of Frostbolt, which is a target projectile, meaning that it will go from the caster to the target no matter what, unless it's destroyed by an environment or something. But in this case, you see that it's also having a use socket option. So where is the projectile going to be spawned? But it's also having now a use target socket. And this is actually giving you control on where exactly this kind of like guided projectile is going to be moved to. This gives you full control. For example, if you wanted it to be in the head of the NPC, or in the, I don't know, stomach or whatever, you know, this gives you full control exactly where this projectile is going to be moving until it's, you know, reaching the target and hitting it. So I'm going to show you all of that in game in a bit, but first I want to show you how we actually create and set up those sockets in our kind of like prefab, etc. So it's made in two different ways for the player and NPC. It is very similar, but just in slightly different ways. So here for the player, I'm going to drag and drop my character prefab. This can be any character prefab you made on your own, of course. And as you can see here, we have a new component called node socket. Here I can add as many sockets as I want. And for now, I only have 2. So you don't have to define all sockets which exist on this character if you don't need it. But just keep in mind that if an ability is, for example, looking for a socket with name, I don't know, attack 2, and it's not existing on that, it will then use the prefab, or rather, you know, object origin instead, and not any socket. It will just use the base position. And here we have projectile 1 and projectile 2. And to give you an idea to what they represent, here is that we actually have the right hand here attached and the left hand attached. And this now allows us in the editor to say, okay, if I wanted to, the frostbolt could be spawned on the right hand and the fireball could be spawned from the left hand. And this could make it very easy to match your animations and all kind of other things. Something I covered in a previous videos also is a new visual effect system, and this is also letting you choose a socket. So in this case, visual effect, so when we start casting the fireball, we now also have some fire particles spawned on your hands, on both hands, and this make it, you know, look pretty cool, like kind of like a really mage casting, etc. And this use projectile 1 and projectile 2 as socket, and this simply means, okay, we spawn fire particle on the right hand and we also spawn fire particle on the left hand. That's it. If I now don't use socket, we don't have control, or rather, you know, that detailed control over where exactly this is spawned. So that's pretty much it for like creating sockets on your character. If I want to add a new one, for example, and say projectile hit. So in this case, let's say that an NPC was casting firebolt on yourselves, or so us, the player, and the socket name for the target was set to projectile hit. If our character does not have a projectile hit, it is then going to use his base position. Now, if we wanted those projectile to be hitting our head, for example, I could go ahead and drag and drop the head bone here. And now, whenever an NPC will cast Frostbolt on us, the projectile is actually going to go to the head. It's as simple as that. I just have to save the prefab and that's it. It's done. So now for NPCs, it is a bit different, but it's still very easy. If you didn't see, in a previous video, I explained that in RPG Builder 1.1, NPCs no longer have prefab, so you don't even need to create NPC prefabs anymore. Instead, it's all done inside the editor. But there is still one prefab used, which is of course the NPC model, right? Because we still need to know how should this NPC look. So I'm going to go ahead and drag and drop this proxy deer, so which is, you know, the model we use for the deer NPC. And here we see that all you have to do for sockets is actually to once again add the not socket component on this specific prefab. That's all. And here you can have projectile 1, projectile hit, whatever socket name you create on your own, because I'm sure you will create many different ones. And now, by doing that, we were able to set up that if I cast Frostbolt on this deer, the projectile is going to go on the jaw here. So here we have this bone, and the projectile is going to move directly towards this transform. So that's pretty much it. You set this, and when the NPC is going to spawn, this is going to be set up. So let's see all of that in game now. I'm going to not go in full screen actually. Come on, Unity, you can do it. I already have a character here. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and use the fireball ability. So as you can see, fireball, remember, it is set up to projectile 1, right? So this is going to use our current projectile 1 socket for the player. So if I look at it here in the scene, it is set to be the right hand. So right now, the projectile is indeed going from the right hand. Now, if I would create, I don't know, any kind of different object and set this, for example, to something absurd like 3 meters high inside the player, drag and drop this. Now, as you can see, it will spawn the fireball above our character where this game object now is. That's pretty much all there is to it. Like, you literally just create things. In this case, of course, this is created inside the character prefab, so it's not going to follow the animation. That's why I'm using actual bones inside the rig, inside the armature, so that it's actually following you model and animations, etc. So that's pretty much it. Not much else to explain. It's very easy to configure. You just create your own transforms. You then add it to your node socket component. You select the socket that you want this to be corresponding to. You drag and drop the transform, and that's it, you're done. And now you can assign them inside the editor. And when you need a new socket, you simply go under settings, combat, and create your own socket. For example, AoE, for example. I don't know, it could be anything. And the nice thing is that these names can be generic. You don't need like one projectile hit for each NPC. You just need one socket named projectile hit. You use the same one on each of your NPC and character prefab, but you just assign their own transform, of course, and it will just work for all of them right away. So yeah, that's pretty much one of the update for the combat visuals in RPG Builder, and it makes it very easy and cool to, well, this obviously looks kind of wrong, but it makes it very easy to change things. Now we can, for example, just to do it one last time, let's say we wanted to shoot the projectile from the head. And as you can see, it is shooting directly from the head bone. So yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.